She heard the door open and didn't look up. That was the first thing they noticed. The nurse in the corner, restocking shelves with her one good arm, didn't flinch when 3 men walked into an empty ER at 2 o'clock in the morning. Didn't freeze, didn't reach for a phone, just kept working. The lead man, Victor Cade's enforcer, a man who had broken fingers for a living and enjoyed it, crossed the room in 6 steps and grabbed her shoulder. She turned slowly. He saw the prosthetic arm first, then the scrubs, then the name badge. And something in his chest loosened, because this was going to be easier than he thought. He leaned in close enough that she could smell whiskey and bad decisions on his breath. "Tell me where the doctor is," he said, "and nobody gets hurt." Maya Reeves looked at his hand on her shoulder, looked at the 2 men behind him blocking the exit. Then she looked back at him with eyes that had seen things this man would never survive, and she said 4 words in a voice so quiet he almost missed them. "You should let go." He didn't. That was his mistake. Not the only one he would make tonight, but the first one. And in the next 4 minutes, inside this hospital that everyone assumed made her soft, Maya Reeves was going to show 3 men exactly what it costs to underestimate the quiet ones. Before we go any further, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And stay with me until the end, because the truth about who Maya Reeves really is doesn't come out all at once. It comes out the way she does everything. Quietly, and then all at once. Maya Reeves had worked the night shift at Hargrove County General for 4 years. She chose nights deliberately. Fewer questions, less noise. The kind of shift where people were too tired to make small talk, and too busy to notice the things she didn't volunteer about herself. Like the arm. The prosthetic was titanium and carbon fiber, fitted so precisely that new staff sometimes didn't notice it until their 3rd or 4th shift working beside her. She moved with it the way people move with things they have made peace with. Not gracefully, not bitterly, just practically. She treated it like one. What nobody at Hargrove County knew. Not her supervising physician, not the HR director who had processed her hiring paperwork, not even Ruth, the senior nurse who had worked beside her for 3 years and knew more about Maya than most, was that the arm had a story, and the story had a number attached to it. But that comes later. Tonight had been the kind of shift that reminded Maya why she stayed. A teenage boy, brought in by his mother at 11 o'clock, fever spiking, delirious, presenting with symptoms that 3 previous ERs had dismissed as anxiety. Maya had taken one look at his eyes, at the way his pupils were tracking, at the specific pattern of his tremors, and known immediately what they had missed. Viral encephalitis. But only if you caught it. She caught it. By midnight he was stable, his mother sitting beside him holding his hand. And Maya had moved on to the next patient without waiting to be thanked, because that was not why she did it. Her husband Caleb found her at 12:30 in the supply room, refilling her trauma kit with the methodical efficiency of someone who had done it in conditions considerably worse than fluorescent lighting and linoleum floors. "You should eat something," he said from the doorway. "I'm fine. You said that 4 hours ago." Maya looked at him. Caleb was a good surgeon and a better man, and he had learned early in their marriage that there were rooms inside her he would never fully enter. He had made his peace with that, the same way she had made her peace with the arm. Without bitterness. "I'll eat at 3, she said. He left her a granola bar on the shelf and went back to his rounds. That was love, Maya had decided. Not the dramatic version, the real version. Someone leaving you a granola bar at 12:30 in the morning because they knew you wouldn't stop moving long enough to feed yourself. She was still thinking about that when the doors opened. 3 men, 2:08 in the morning, no visible injuries, no one accompanying them, The kind of entrance that the night shift taught you to read in the first 3 seconds. Maya read it in 2. The leader was mid-40s, thick through the shoulders, wearing a jacket that was too heavy for the weather and hung wrong on the left side. The two behind him moved the way men moved when they were used to moving in formation, spread, controlled, eyes on exits. She had known men like this. Had worked beside them in places where the sand turned red faster than it could dry. She set down her supply tray and turned to face them. The leader's eyes moved across the room, past Ruth at the nurse's station, past the occupied bay at the far end, where a post-surgical patient was sleeping, past the empty corridors leading deeper into the hospital. Then they landed on Maya. She watched him take her in, the scrubs, the name badge, the prosthetic arm hanging quiet at her side. She watched his shoulders drop half an inch. Dismissal. She had seen it 10,000 times. The slight recalibration that happened in people's bodies when they decided someone was not a threat. It never offended her. It was, in fact, frequently useful. "Can I help you?" she asked. His name was Tommy Vega. She didn't know that yet, but she would. He was Victor Cade's logistics man, the person who solved problems when Cade's operation ran into complications. And tonight's complication was Dr. Caleb Reeves, who had treated a gunshot victim 3 hours ago and had the misfortune of being thorough enough to document it correctly. "We need to see the doctor," Vega said, "the one who admitted a patient earlier tonight." "Dr. Reeves isn't available. Make him available." Maya looked at him for a long moment, long enough to count the tells, the way his right hand stayed close to his hip, the way the man on his left had positioned himself between the door and Ruth, the way the third one hadn't moved since entering, just watched, which meant he was the one she needed to keep track of most. "Sir," she said, her voice completely level, "this is an emergency room. If you're not here for medical treatment, I'm going to need you to leave." Vega smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "We're not leaving," he said, "and neither are you. Not until we get what we came for." Behind him, the man near Ruth put a hand on the senior nurse's shoulder. Ruth went still. Her eyes found Maya's across the room. And in that moment, something shifted in Maya Reeves. Not panic, not fear. Something quieter and considerably more dangerous. The same thing that had shifted in her in Fallujah 11 years ago, in a courtyard full of smoke and gunfire, when everyone else was running and she had simply stopped, assessed, and decided. She had never told anyone what she decided that night. But Vega was about to find out. Maya moved first. Not toward Vega, not toward the door. She walked calmly to the nurse's station, placed both hands flat on the counter, and looked at Ruth with an expression that said exactly one thing: "Stay down." Ruth had worked beside Maya for 3 years. She understood. Vega watched this with the mild amusement of a man who had never been in a situation he couldn't control. "What are you doing?" "Checking on my patient," Maya said. She pulled up a chart on the computer, eyes on the screen, fingers moving. She looked completely unbothered. She was completely unbothered. That was the part Vega couldn't read and couldn't account for. "Lady," his voice hardened, "I'm talking to you. I heard you. Then act like it." He crossed to the station in 4 steps and slammed his hand down on the counter between them. The sound echoed through the empty ER. "Where is the doctor?" Then, at his face, "You just contaminated a sterile surface," she said. Vega blinked. That was the thing about Maya that people never anticipated. She did not perform calm. She did not manufacture it for effect. It was simply her natural state, in situations that terrified everyone else, a product of 11 years of learning, that the moment you let fear make your decisions, people died. She had let fear make a decision exactly once. She had been 26 years old, in a courtyard in Fallujah, and the decision had cost her the arm. She had not made that mistake again. The third man, the one who had stayed near the entrance and hadn't spoken, moved toward the corridor leading to the surgical wing. That was the moment Maya stopped being patient. She came around the nurse's station in 3 steps, planting herself between the man and the corridor with the kind of stillness that made him stop, without understanding why he had stopped. "That hallway is closed," she said. "Move." No. He reached for her, specifically for the prosthetic arm, the way people always did when they wanted to physically dominate someone they had already decided was diminished. A grab for the weak point. Textbook. What happened next lasted approximately 4 seconds. Maya's left hand caught his wrist before his fingers closed. She applied pressure to a specific cluster of nerves at the base of his thumb with a precision that required knowing exactly where to press and exactly how hard. His grip released involuntarily. His knees buckled slightly. He made a sound he would spend considerable time trying to forget. She stepped back and looked at him the way she looked at patients who were about to make a decision that would make things worse. "Don't," she said. The room had gone very quiet. Vega stared at her. His earlier assessment, the one where his shoulders had dropped half an inch and he had decided she was not a threat, was undergoing rapid revision. The second man, the one who had been standing near Ruth, had his hand inside his jacket. Maya saw it, catalogued it, continued breathing at the same rate. "You don't want to do that here," she said to him without turning her head. "There are cameras on every angle of this room. Federal reporting requirements for firearm discharge in a medical facility. And the noise will bring my husband out of surgery, which is the last thing any of us want right now." She was lying about the surgery. Caleb was in his office eating the second half of a sandwich, but they didn't know that. The hand came out of the jacket empty. "Good," Maya said. Vega had recovered enough of himself to be dangerous again, which was the problem with men like him. They didn't reassess, they escalated. He grabbed her by the front of her scrubs and pulled her forward until they were close enough that she could see the specific shape of his anger. "I don't know what you think you are," he said quietly, "but you're one woman with one arm in an empty hospital at 2 in the morning. Where is the doctor?" Maya looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something he did not expect. She reached up with her left hand and pulled down the collar of her scrub top, exposing her left shoulder. The tattoo was small, precise, black ink that had held its edges for 11 years without fading. 6 words in Arabic script, curved along the line of her shoulder like they belonged there. Vega stared at it. His Arabic was limited but functional, the way it was for anyone who had spent time running operations in certain parts of the world. He read it twice. His face changed. "They never saw me coming." "What is that?" the third man said from across the room. His voice had lost its steadiness. Vega didn't answer. He was still looking at the tattoo, at the way it sat perfectly centered, professionally done. The kind of ink you got to commemorate something rather than decorate something. "Who are you?" he said. His voice was different now. Maya pulled her collar back into place. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I work the night shift. I go home at 7 in the morning and I sleep for 6 hours, and I come back and do it again." She met his eyes. "And 11 years ago, before all of that, I was attached to a classified direct action unit operating in Fallujah. Tier 1, 3 deployments." She paused. "Your employer's brother was in a courtyard on my 3rd deployment. He was preparing to execute 4 American soldiers who were being held in a building 200 meters from my position." The room was completely silent. "I was the one they sent in first, because I could move without being heard," Maya said. "Because I was a medic, and nobody ever expects the medic to be the most dangerous person in the room." Vega had stopped breathing normally. "I stabilized all 4 soldiers before the extraction team arrived. And I made sure the man in that courtyard could not hurt anyone else." She tilted her head slightly. Victor Cade has been looking for the person responsible for his brother's death for 11 years. She let that land. He's been looking in the wrong places, because nobody knew it was me. My file is sealed. My name was never attached to that operation. She looked directly at Vega. Until you walked through that door tonight, and gave me a reason to stop being invisible. Outside, in the parking lot, headlights swept across the ER windows. Not one vehicle, 3, moving in the deliberate pattern of people who had done this before. Vega turned toward the windows, turned back to Maya. "Who did you call?" he said. Maya's expression didn't change. "I didn't call anyone," she said. "But when you walked in here tonight, a sensor on the external door flagged this facility for elevated threat assessment. Federal protocol for medical facilities with classified personnel on staff." She straightened her scrubs with her left hand. "They've been outside for 6 minutes. They were waiting to see if I needed them." The doors opened. Colonel Diane Okafor walked in first. She was 51 years old, built like someone who had never stopped doing the things that had made her dangerous at 30, and she wore civilian clothes with the uncomfortable precision of someone who would always look more natural in uniform. Her eyes found Maya immediately. "Reeves," she said. Not a greeting, a confirmation. "Colonel," Maya said. Okafor scanned the room in 2 seconds. Catalogued Vega, the third man still holding his wrist near the corridor, the second man near the wall. Her expression didn't change. "These the ones?" "Yes, ma'am." Okafor nodded once and stepped aside. 4 people came through the door behind her. Plain clothes. The particular kind of plain clothes that wasn't trying to fool anyone. Vega put his hands up without being asked. He had enough experience with certain kinds of people to know when the calculus had shifted beyond recovery. The third man tried the corridor. He made it 2 steps. Maya was already there. She didn't touch him this time. She simply stood in his path and looked at him with the same expression she used for patients who are about to make things worse for themselves. He stopped, sat down on the floor, put his hands on his knees. "Smart," Maya said. The ER looked different with federal agents in it. Not louder, actually quieter. The specific quiet of a room where everyone present understood exactly what was happening, and nobody needed it explained. Okafor stood near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in the clipped shorthand of someone coordinating moving parts across multiple locations. 2 of her people had Vega against the far wall. The third man was still on the floor. The second, the one who had reached inside his jacket, was zip-tied to a chair with the resigned expression of someone who had made one too many bad decisions and was now doing the math on the consequences. Ruth had not moved from behind the nurse's station. She was watching Maya with an expression that was somewhere between shock and the particular satisfaction of someone who had always suspected there was more to the quiet woman on the night shift, and had just been proven spectacularly right. Maya was checking her patient in Bay 4. The post-surgical case, 63 years old, recovering from a gallbladder removal. Completely unaware that the ER outside his curtain had just become a federal scene. His vitals were stable. His IV was running correctly. He was sleeping the deep unconscious sleep of heavy anesthesia wearing off. She adjusted his blanket, noted his oxygen saturation, wrote in his chart. Reeves, Okafor appeared at the curtain. "We need to talk. Give me a minute. Now." Maya made one more notation. Then she clipped her pen to her scrub pocket and stepped out. They stood in the corridor outside the bay, far enough from Vega and his men to speak privately, close enough that Maya could see the room. Old habit. She always kept eyes on the room. "How long have you known they were looking for you?" Okafor asked. Maya considered the question. 6 months, maybe 7. Small things. A car parked outside her building 2 days running. A name that came up in a conversation it shouldn't have appeared in. Nothing solid enough to act on. You should have called me. I handled it. You handled it by doing nothing. I handled it by staying invisible. Maya's voice was quiet, but precise, which worked fine until tonight. Okafor studied her for a long moment with the expression of someone who had known Maya Reeves for 15 years and understood exactly how much she was not saying. Victor Cade has been building toward this for 2 years, Okafor said, since his brother's name came up in a declassified report. The report didn't name you specifically, but it named the unit, and Cade had enough resources to start narrowing it down. She paused. He's been working through a list. Everyone attached to that operation. Maya went still. How many people on that list? She said. 11. Okafor's voice was even. You're the last one he hadn't located. And the others? All accounted for. All protected. We've had eyes on Cade's operation for 4 months. Tonight was the first time his people moved directly on a target. We needed him to commit before we could move on the full network. Maya looked back toward the ER, toward Vega sitting against the wall, his earlier confidence completely gone, replaced by the flat affect of a man running calculations that kept coming up short. You used me as the trigger, Maya said, not a question. We used the situation, Okafor said carefully. We've had surveillance on this facility for 3 weeks. The moment those men walked through that door, we were already moving. You could have warned me. If we warned you, your behavior changes. If your behavior changes, Cade pulls his people back, and we lose the network. Okafor's voice didn't carry apology, but it carried something. Weight. The specific weight of decisions made by people who understood the cost and made them anyway. You know how this works. Maya knew how it worked. She had spent 11 years making exactly those kinds of decisions. The ones where you weighed one loss against many, and chose the many every time, and lived with the one forever. She looked at her prosthetic arm. The arm was the one she hadn't been able to prevent. The soldier she had been stabilizing when the courtyard erupted. The 4 seconds of distraction that cost her the limb. She had run the calculation 10,000 times since, and always arrived at the same answer. She would make the same choice again. She would always make the same choice again. That did not make the arm easier to carry. How long until Cade is in custody? She asked. Okafor checked her phone. 17 minutes ago, she said. Maya turned to look at her. We moved on his location simultaneously, Okafor said. The moment Vega's team entered this building, we had authorization to take the entire network. Cade, his lieutenants, his distribution chain across 4 states. Okafor pocketed her phone. It's done, Reeves, all of it. The words settled slowly. Maya had spent 7 months carrying the low-grade awareness of being hunted, the careful routes to work, the habit of noting faces in parking lots, the way she had stopped sitting with her back to windows, a discipline she had worked hard to unlearn after leaving the service, and had quietly reinstated 6 months ago without telling Caleb why. She exhaled once, slow and controlled. Then she went back to work. Caleb found her at 4 o'clock in the morning, restocking the trauma bay. He had been briefed by Okafor's people around 3:15. Maya had been told he was briefed. Neither of them had sought the other out immediately, which was one of the ways they worked. They processed separately and came back together when the processing was done. He stood in the doorway the same way he had stood at 12:30, watching her move through the supply inventory with her left hand, the prosthetic arms steady at her side. You're okay, he said. I'm okay. He was quiet for a moment. She could hear him deciding whether to say the next thing. You knew something was wrong, he said, these past few months. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I didn't want to worry you, Maya. She stopped what she was doing, turned to face him. Caleb's face held the particular expression of a man who loved someone whose interior life he would never fully access, and had made peace with that, and was currently in the process of remaking that peace after it had been disrupted. Next time, he said, you tell me. I'm not asking to fix it. I'm not asking to be part of the operation, or whatever it is you people call it. So I'm not standing in my office eating a sandwich while my wife is. He stopped. While my wife is handling it, Maya finished. Something moved through his expression. Not quite a smile. The shape of one. Yeah, he said, while my wife is handling it. She crossed to him, and he put his arms around her, carefully, the way he always did, and she let herself be held for exactly as long as she needed to be, which was not very long, but was not nothing. By 5 o'clock, the federal team had cleared the ER. Evidence bags, statements, the specific bureaucratic aftermath of an operation that had been planned for months and executed in minutes. Okafor found Maya one more time before she left. There'll be a debrief, she said. Standard. Probably next week. I'll be there. Okafor nodded. Then she did something she rarely did. She stopped moving for a moment and simply looked at Maya with the unguarded expression of someone setting aside rank and history and everything that made directness complicated. You did good tonight, she said. Not just tonight, the whole time. 7 months of staying invisible, staying calm, not running. Not everyone could do that. Maya thought about the teenage boy with the encephalitis, the one 3 previous ERs had missed. She thought about the post-surgical patient in Bay 4, sleeping soundly through everything. She thought about Ruth, still at the nurse's station, who had stayed down when Maya told her to, and trusted her without knowing why. I had things worth staying calm for, Maya said. Okafor held her gaze for one more second. Then she turned and walked out through the automatic doors into the dark parking lot, where her vehicles were waiting. At 6:45, 15 minutes before her shift ended, Maya stood at the sink in the staff bathroom and ran cold water over her left wrist. Old habit from the service. Something about cold water on the pulse point. It worked. She had never fully understood why, and had stopped trying to. She looked at herself in the mirror. The scrubs, the name badge, the prosthetic arm reflected back at her in the harsh bathroom light. She thought about Vega's face when he read the tattoo, the way his certainty had drained out of him in real time, replaced by the specific fear of a man realizing the ground beneath him was not what he had assumed. She thought about Victor Cade, somewhere in federal custody right now, learning for the first time who had been in that courtyard in Fallujah. Learning that the person he had spent 2 years hunting was a night shift nurse in a rural hospital who had never once reached out, never once looked over her shoulder in any way that was visible, never given him anything to find, until he sent his people to the wrong ER on the wrong night. She turned off the water, dried her hand, unpinned her name badge, looked at it once, and pinned it back. At 7:02 she clocked out, walked through the ER, said goodnight to Ruth, and pushed through the automatic doors into the early morning. The parking lot was pale with winter light, the smell of rain that had fallen while she was inside. Caleb was waiting by the car. She got in. He drove. Neither of them spoke for a while, which was its own kind of language, the one they had built together over years of early mornings and late nights, and all the things that didn't need to be said out loud to be understood. Then Caleb said, quietly, without taking his eyes off the road, "The granola bar, you never ate it." Maya looked at him. A small thing happened at the corner of her mouth. "I'll eat it tomorrow," she said. He reached across and took her left hand and held it for the rest of the drive home. And in a federal holding facility across the city, Victor Cade sat in a room with no windows, learning that the person who had ended his brother's life had spent the years since saving lives one at a time in a quiet hospital where nobody knew her name. He would spend the next several decades in a concrete cell thinking about that. Maya would spend the morning sleeping. and at 7 o'clock that evening she would wake up, drink coffee, kiss her husband, and drive back to Hargrove County General for another night shift. Because that was what she did. That was who she was. And anyone who thought the prosthetic arm, or the quiet manner, or the night shift scrubs made her something less than what she actually was, had simply never been. In the room when it mattered. The ones who had been in that room didn't make that mistake twice. If this story reminded you that the most dangerous people are often the quietest ones in the room, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this traveled. Share this with someone who has ever been underestimated. And subscribe, because every week we tell stories about people who refuse to be what others decided they were. The quiet ones always surprise you in the end.